Like Wilson's the co-founder here. I think he can help you with what you need.
Oh my goodness. Huge kudos to you, Cassandra Chan,
Thank you.
for taking home this prize.
Start.
Hello, friends. My name is Wilson, and
I'm Cass.
we are back for another week of Two Kids in a Startup, where we talk about how we're working together, raising two kids, living a life of our own design, and everything in between. So then that way, we can share some of the lessons along the path and journey.
Yeah. This week was an interesting week.
Super.
Lots of feminine energy that we were both around this week.
Ooh, it was an interesting experience for sure.
Yeah. So we spent the time this week to go to Toronto and pitch at the F3 Global Pitch Competition, which is their mission is really to fund female founders. And it was amazing because what was interesting about their purpose and their mission is that under 3% and 2 for this year, less than 3 to 2% of female founders get funded. And that's a shocking number.
That means that specifically projects and startups that go seek for venture funding, 97% are funding male.
Just male.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was a powerful mission that they're on. And it was great because I had applied for this competition and was a finalist, one of 9 to fly to Toronto and pitch to get prize of up to 30,000.
Yeah, big shout out to F3 for hosting this event. And I think it was so funny. It was actually a month ago, right, that we applied for this, and you're already joking around. You're like, "Hey, Wilson, should we apply? Should we apply?"
Yeah, it was strange because it wasn't something that I was even thinking of, and it just popped, and I'm like, "Hey, are we ready?" We weren't ready. We were ready. We weren't ready to. We didn't have a finalized pitch deck. Like we were still kind of pivoting a little bit. Mm-hmm. So really, when I got this, it was I think we found out on maybe Thursday. We had to book a ticket on Saturday, and then we had to compete on Wednesday. So it was a very tight time frame.
Super. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun preparing for this, and it's actually such a big moment. I mean, honestly, the fact that you were shortlisted was a huge validation already. Mm-hmm. I think, right? Especially because you jumping out of your full-time job, right? And you just jumping into this just 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. And really, is it 2 months? Something like that.
What do you mean?
Like just really dedicating. You're like, this
jumping full time?
Yeah.
I feel like I've been on this thing for like the last 2 years.
No, I meant as in like, you're right. As in like committing 100% into this.
Yeah.
Was like just a month ago-ish. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it took a lot for you to commit to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? What was so difficult about it?
What it was difficult was because it was hard. It was hard.
It's difficult and it's hard.
It's hard in a sense that, okay, so as much as I applied, and then when I found out, the first thing that I was thinking about was all the things I needed: childcare, pick up, drop off, food, kids. How are we going to coordinate leaving? Because I knew I had to be in Toronto. How many days did we need to go to Toronto? So there's the childcare and logistical part of it. The other part of it was, we need to prepare for it. So getting a pitch deck ready, and getting that set up where we really had nothing from scratch. And I think we both had an alignment of where we wanted to go, but now we really needed to be aligned on what is the vision. You know, we were still kind of tweaking what that could look like, and we really needed to nail everything from top up to bottom down done. And more on a personal level it's not easy. I think, was I mentally prepared to jump into it in a week? No, would I have loved more time? 100%. And I think it was important from an experience, but also important to be able to show up for others, to show that someone who is a woman, who is a mom, who is an entrepreneur can represent and show others that this is something that is possible and is important.
That's a lot to unpack. Let's dive into the deck and the preparation a little bit, because I think that's quite exciting for us to actually take a few days off just to like block off our entire calendar just to focus on this and have this crazy jam session. And I think just to elaborate a little bit more, when you said that we're not ready, we have nothing. It's not like we haven't been doing things. We have like 20 plus pages of notes on the entire vision of this product that we have been building for the last 5-6 months already. We have built a lot, just want to put it out there.
Yeah,
but
absolutely. Absolutely.
When you're saying that we're not ready is more so on the fundraising aspect.
Yes.
Which is to have the ability to create a very tight pitch in a deck format that we can circulate amongst investors to pique their interest and to show them in very simple terms, how big is this market? Who are you targeting? How is your solution going to impact the world? Why are you the team to do that? And basically, what is your product about? How do you differentiate yourself amongst all the competitors? And these all need to be very, very precise, because mind you, all these investors, they're looking at 10, 15 decks a day. And so what you need to present needs to be groundbreaking, and not only that, in a way that is easily consumable for these investors. And so that's why it took us a little bit of time.
It took us a little bit, yes. And I think what was also another important factor in this, which is a lot of work, is like you said, we had all the information. It was, how do we pull all the information to tell the right story? And positioning a pitch in whatever story, there is a million ways to position a pitch, and how to center it. What is the highlight? What is the value proposition that we're highlighting in this pitch? And then secondly, it's around the numbers. And because we just rolled out our MVP just 2 weekends ago, 3 weekends ago, the numbers, we were putting it together, but we really had to pull it all together to see a trend and build the trend and get all those metrics so that it can help inform the pitch. Like we had it. All the data was just raw, because we're literally building it as we are building the pitch. So that's why it was a bit of a puzzle.
Well, our agenda was to go out to fundraise in September. And so we felt like we have a little bit more time. And when it's like creating a deck is really about creating a narrative of like, hey, you know what? Why do you want to invest in us? And why is this the right timing? And that means that all the information that you put onto the deck needs to be able to align from beginning to end, vice versa, and sideways, backwards, diagonal. Everything needs to make sense within the story that you're telling. And that itself requires you to deep dive into all these different scenarios and the different questions that people may ask you. For example, why are us the team to actually pull this application off or this platform off? Like, that's a big question people would ask.
And you would, yeah, exactly. And you would think it is just your biography. But the thing is, if you really want to hit it home, is what out of the key points of your biography and your history and your resume per se, are the things that you pull out that is tied to the value you can bring to this business, and that is a unique selling point that you have that others don't have.
Which is, for us, an example.
An example?
In our case.
Of who we are?
Yeah, exactly. Just to demonstrate like why this is, like, you make a really good point. It's like, how do we build on top of and pull out stuff that can actually build our case?
Yeah. So for me would be, we highlighted being able to scale businesses and really help transform them for growth and trajectory. And for you, obviously, because it was an event space, we highlighted more around your event specialty versus all the other businesses you've had before as well.
Exactly, exactly. And the fact that we can mobilize a team of 100 to actually sell the application and educate people, to onboard people to the application, that gives me and Cass a very unique opportunity versus anyone else to see the success of this platform. And that's what we really need to be able to highlight, is that we have this unfair advantage over everyone else to make this a tremendous success.
You know what was really interesting out of the whole building the pitch deck process was how we pivoted halfway through. So we went to build out the deck initially, and we started with the big vision, the big numbers, the potential we see this business at. And we kind of made small what we've already done and our initial goals. And do you want to explain kind of why when we talked about who the audience is?
Right. Because so my perspective has always been fundraising, looking at the numbers, looking at how big the marketplace is, because I'm much more, my audience has always been VCs. I've been pitching for the last I've been basically pitching ever since we ever started. And so that's my demographic. And while me and Cass were working on this, this is kind of what I bring to the table. And when we were close to the finish mark,
we had a deck ready.
Yeah.
We spent, I would say we were already 10 hours in.
Oh, more than that.
Yeah,
for sure. More than that. Way more than that. And it was not until Cass was like, oh, this is a funding female founder competition. And we realized that part of the judging criteria is not just on investors, not just on the judges, but also on the audience perspective. And so that was when we realized that, oh, these are the people that are going to be coming through. And we need to be able to appeal not just from the numbers in the business case, but also talking about how
we need to build in a bit more relatability. And I think another piece of that is being able to convey, like, we're not pitching for $100 million. You know, we don't need to think about it as, how are we going to, what is the product that makes us build into $100 million at this point? This was a global pitch competition, and the prize, not that it's important, but we needed to, A, what you mentioned about the audience is important, and then B, but also, hey, we're pitching at for a smaller amount. And so where are we going to use these funds? These funds are going to be building something that we already have to elevate it and enhance it. And so for us to pitch something that we needed like $500 billion may not have been as authentic or felt like it didn't connect the why of why we were there and for the purpose of this competition. So knowing the audience, knowing who we were serving or who this is for was important. That drove us to then pivot and redo the deck again.
Pivot the narrative, because we need to come from a more humble beginning perspective. And on the other hand, let's say if we were to pitch for a VC, they have 100 million that they need to deploy. And so they need to know that this is a big project that has the potential to make $100 million in the next 5 years.
Totally.
Otherwise, it's just not worth their time.
Agreed.
Right? And so that's the perspective. And I think it was really insightful for us to actually like pivot midway through. When you brought it up, you're like, hey, Wilson, like, this is not going to fly. This is not our audience. And I'm like, that was so insightful. So good job, Cass.
Thanks. Yeah. So building the deck was a project on its own and rushing it. And I would say that was fun. It was a nice product that we built, and I'm happy with it. And then on top of that, this was a different pitch usually, because when you normally pitch, you're pitching in person and you're pitching to a person. This one allowed us to pre-record the pitch and submit it. And it was And that was very intentful of F3 because truly they wanted to take all the elements of making it easier to support the women founders in focusing on getting funding and remembering the words of what to say, the exact words when takes a lot already. And so to be able to pull that out is actually very powerful in my opinion.
So basically leveling the playing field, allowing the founders to really prep and put their best foot forward.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that for me, I'm like, you know what? If they just got to have the chops, they need to overcome their stage fear, like practice. And so I always thought of it like that, but then to see the other side of things, I'm like, wow, this is very attentive of them. And I mean,
yeah, I like that, level the playing field. And also we're just removing any factors that could inhibit their best performance. So then we had to prepare the video and as well as the illustrations and the design of the deck is also important. How it's presented is very important. What images should we pull? How to keep it clean. And that is a thought in its own. How do we lay out how do we make points stand out? Keep things simple, concise, clean.
And something that we have also been very intentful of is being able to do the best in every area that we can think of to outbeat the competition. Because after all, this is a competition and every little bit counts. And what I mean by that is from thinking about presenting and embedding closed captioning.
That was a good one.
Yeah, I think so too. That was beautiful. Because out of all the 10 pitches that was present on that date, 9 pitches rather, there was only 2 pitches that had the closed captioning, and we were one of them.
Oh, I didn't know there was 2, but it was great because if you think about it, again, knowing your audience, we know it's going to be played. And
in a room of over 100, by the way. And so like people are watching the screen and like, of course, like sound system, we haven't been there as well. So we don't know how the sound system is going to be. So having closed captioning is definitely super important because a lot of people are going to be networking, people are going to be talking. And so that was a really big one up for us. Another one was it being able to utilize the mics that we have.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Leveraging our skills or your skills in content. Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, like we were able to have these really crisp studio sound within the presentation, which because it was in a room environment of 100, like it just was able to stand out amongst all the other pitches because it's so clear. Yeah. And not only that, the big shout out to Sam Jean, the engagement in terms of like the transition within every 2-3 seconds of when we were illustrating a point to transitioning to you to transitioning back out, and it was just so clean, the entire transactions of
thoughtful. And it really drives home and makes an impact of what needs to be focused when it was shared. So the pitch deck was
spot on. I was like a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think so. And a huge teamwork on this entire thing to pull off. So
yeah.
Awesome.
I would also say, as much as it was so tight, like we were really by the hour. There was no time where we took time off from when we found out to when we said yes. However, one of the organizers that had offered to help, just a casual message, be like, hey, if anybody needs a comment or feedback, message me. And as much as I was not ready, we had, the pitch deck was not ready. My guidance is that if there's anybody who is offering this help, especially someone part of the team, take it, because you don't know what but you don't know the audience. And I think that even though I wasn't ready, we had to now have another deadline to hit because I needed to submit it to her first. But what it helped me was really get a bit of a peek under the hood around what is it that they're looking for? And if it wasn't for her to just kind of get a little bit of a direction, then I don't think it would has made that big of an impact.
100%. Her guidance was very insightful, and I think it also inspired us to be like, oh, this is the audience.
Yeah, and this is the right direction.
Exactly. Validation and everything, and that's actually a really good point. Is the guidance to actually take what is being offered, and on that note, I would actually be more proactive. I'll be like,
yeah,
right. It's like, hey, do you mind taking a peek at this? And I think going above and beyond, that's not even it. It's like, how much do you want it? It's really about like your hunger and your urgency. Like, do you want it enough to ask people for help? And majority of the time, people are way more willing to help than you think. And what's the worst that can happen? They would just say no, and you just go on with your day, right? So I think it has always proven to be like a super hack for me personally, is just keep asking.
Yeah.
Check your ego at the door. Yeah.
So we went from preparing the deck, and then we got the deck together. And then now it was really time to really prep. And
Well,
this was...
Let's break it down into 3 phases. There's the 3 big buckets that we had to do. One was preparing the deck, and second is to prepare for your Q&A.
Yeah.
That pitch Q&A.
Yeah.
And then the third was to make sure that all the numbers back up, and making sure that we break down all the different questions, the big questions that were unsolved for. Right. And now that we were done the deck, we had to do all the Q&A.
Just making sure that we knew our business inside and out.
And prepare for...
Making sure, validating the numbers, making sure you understood the numbers. Because there's the live Q&A, which we don't know the questions, but you need to know, obviously, everything that you have.
And something that you have also done, which was really smart, was... why don't you share about that? It's like, even though we don't know the questions, you know the potential angles that they would be coming from.
Yeah. And I think this actually leveraged my experience in recruiting, actually, is because, we are a value-based driven company. So I wanted to understand what their values are, what are their pillars. And for them, they had 3, which was regeneration, diversity and inclusion, and onboarding. And so knowing that they are value-based driven, we needed to understand, okay, well, how does our product fit those values? And so knowing who your audience, again, studying them, and then making sure you're preparing for them, not just your own business, but in this context of what you are competing for, study what they're looking for and the type of people they're looking for.
Exactly. That was really, that part was really well done, because I think it came up quite a few times, and I think, like, just judging from your performance, I'm like, wow, that was really well done. Yeah.
Thank you. So moving on to preparing, which was also a work on its own. And I, at that time, as much as we gathered all the content together and prepared all, made sure we understood the business all in one document, now it is studying it. And thank goodness that Vancouver to Toronto was a 4-hour flight. But I basically committed to, okay, the 4 hours, I'm not going to do anything but just study, understand. Any questions, let's look at it sideways, backwards. I would poke you. I'm like, hey, is this how we want to position this? Make sure that we were aligned. And then on the other side of it was more of a personal, spiritual grounding practice that I wanted to make sure that it's nerve-wracking, I would say. And I also wanted to be my best self, to be focused and clear. And so I was sharing with you yesterday was that I actually spent, let's say, for the 4 hours I spent to study the technical stuff, I spent, if not more hours, more than the 4 hours, to just meditate and focus so that I could be as focused and clear, whether that was before a night or when I was on the cab ride there or when I was after the lunch. It was so chaotic. I just needed my own time to think and remove myself from things that will get me nervous and make sure that I just stayed okay and try to remove it and just stay present and focused and clear. And so that really helped me as a little hack.
I think that was so spot on when you were talking about meditation to remove everything. You perform the best when you're calm. Like you're really able to zone into it when you internalize problems and when you're like able to calmly just be within yourself, and you're able to perform then. And I think that when it comes down to presentations, pitches and whatnot, like of course, this is like literally your first time in such a big stage. I'm like, whoa, it was amazing. And I'm so proud. By the way, congratulations for even having the courage to step up on stage. Like we already talked about this. We're like, it's already a big win, huge win, right? And congratulations.
Thanks,
I'm so
babe.
proud of you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Meditation is one big tool that you utilized, and it has helped you a lot to ground yourself for a presentation or a big day. And there are many different tools. And for me personally, I always like to stand in front of the stage and visualize when I can, like in part like a rehearsal per se, because for me to have the opportunity to stand right there and just kind of like see the stage, see people's seatings and everything before the actual thing happens, allows me to be like, okay, this is it. That's it. I'm walk around, pace, do my rehearsal once there, and just feel comfortable being there. And ultimately just to be able to stay calm. And that has personally helped me. So I just want to throw another tidbit out there for those that are preparing for any type of experiences that they want to go through.
Yeah.
Day of competition that you were talking about.
Yeah. So we all stayed in different kind of Airbnbs, and it was great that the organizer in the morning organized a sound bath, and it was just perfect timing. I think that was really important, and it was important to make time for it. Well, at least for me, because again, like studying for a performance is important, but also studying for yourself and grounding yourself is important. So we had a sound bath that was organized. And then there was a networking lunch that was good. And I was hesitant about going, but then I thought about, okay, this might be just a good opportunity to knowing that there would be connections and networks that we needed to go. Did I necessarily want to, because I was already, it was the day off and I really wanted to prep, but it was important from another perspective. And so decided to go. And
by the way, on that note, it's usually the satellite events, the lunches, the intimate settings that have, I would say, 10, 20 people that you make the most out of these types of events, because you get to be able to have these side chats. And the side chats are the ones that people usually share a lot more. You're going to be able to meet people that is a lot more in line with what you need at that moment and how you can support them and vice versa. And so that's what I just wanted to elaborate on why it's important on the other note, is like the BD side of things, the business development side of things.
Yeah. So we went to a lunch close by with the founders, the other 9 competition finalists, as well as some funding investors who were also there. So I would say there was a good like 15 people there to connect, and it was good. Connected. We were there for an hour and a half. Then you went over to a business lunch and I was by myself, and everybody was heading over to the event, but I knew I needed some time to just, again, need my own internal time to internalize and be calm. So I just stayed at the restaurant where I like went through my notes again, and then also had time to just minimize the noise. And then I went to go jump on a cab, meditated there, and went to the event finally, and it was chaotic. So this was at the Blockchain Futurist Conference, and it was
Let's
a
paint a picture. Like, how many people were there? I think there were like thousands of people.
maybe it was quite a big space.
Yeah.
And lots of people, lots of vendors there, and there was it was a lot. It was quite chaotic.
Mind
and
you, this was in one of the biggest clubs in Toronto, and so the sound system was just blasting.
Yeah.
And it's like a party. Like a lot of times, like when you go to these Web3 events, it's always like super high energy, always party mode kind of deal.
Yeah.
And so for you preparing for one of the biggest times of your current career, it's like, whoa, like this is a lot throwing at you, like all these people coming, like just nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was like back-to-back people, and it was extremely hot. Thank goodness there was a bit of a delay when we went up for the tech check, because I just needed to get out of there.
Yeah.
So then I went to the harbor, walked there a little bit, and I just sat there. I listened to my favorite 420 hertz music, which is kind of like a healing frequency to just kind of then again back to that mental preparation, and just stayed calm and be where I needed to be. And so then it was presentation time.
Whoa. But before we do that, one thing that usually happens is when you're at these networking events, funny story by the way, is that people always get it wrong on how to network. And what I mean by that is when the first time they meet you and they just throw everything at you, trying to pitch you their greatest idea that is going to be world changing. And that's the biggest mistake that people make, because anyone of value would not like to be pitched the first time they meet each other. There's a relationship building. There's a certain etiquette that you need to have. And it was really funny because why I'm sharing this story and why I'm sharing the lessons is because right before Cass's presentation and jumping on stage, there was this guy that was pitching Cass for a good 5 minutes, just nonstop talking, just like, hey, this is my biggest startup, blah, 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 like just nonstop talking. I was right beside her. I'm like, oh man, I gotta help her out. So what I did was, I'm like, hey Cass, I think you need to, this requires your attention. Show Cass my phone, and Cass looks at it for a second.
For a few seconds, I'm nodding, and I'm like, yep, he's showing me
a blank screen. And then she's like, Wilson, you're right. I gotta attend to this. Why don't you talk to him?
Like, Wilson's the co-founder here. I think he can help you with what you need.
Oh my goodness.
I tagged myself out and tagged you in. Thank you. And you're the best.
She just left me. And I'm like, that's not how the dynamic should work. You should be like, yes, we need to attend to this together. We're leaving together, not take my partner and peace.
Yeah. I think it's important though, because sometimes you don't know who you're talking to. So my perspective is, talk to them regardless if it may not be something that they can provide of value. It doesn't mean, and sometimes you never know who they are. So being able to but it could have just been timing, I guess, at that time.
I gotta disagree with you on that. Like I have a very strong opinion on this, especially just going to so many of these events. Like that's a story for another time, but definitely highly disagree with that. I think it's really important to protect your space, your time, and your own energy. You only have so much bandwidth, and you're only there for such a short period of time. So it's very important to be protective. So how do you feel? This is moments before your pitch.
So what they played, the recording, the pitch video, it's never fun to look at a video of yourself. I don't like looking at videos of me. I don't like hear how I sound. It's never fun. So that was uncomfortable. And of
Were you
course,
cringing?
yeah.
Like in
Not
front
only
of
was
like
I
hundreds of
cringing,
people?
was all the people were, I was sitting next to the TV, which was where all the pitch videos were played. And if I wasn't sitting next to the TV, I could have been like, okay, uncomfortable, but sure.
You
But because I was sitting next to the TV, do you remember how it was positioned?
you were so funny. You were like a live mascot
I
standing next to
know.
yourself while you're talking. Like you're like, yes, and you can't move because
I
you gotta
can't move because, and
exactly.
also everyone is looking at my direction, and I'm just
Yeah,
sitting there looking
yeah.
at the other
You
TV and
got
having to be the most
still,
still,
yeah,
but
yeah.
it was just extremely uncomfortable. I would have much preferred sitting in the audience where most people, it was just
You could
timing.
have.
I could have, but I couldn't leave by the time I realized the pitcher's video
You were.
was playing. It was just extremely awkward.
It
And
was pretty
so,
awkward. Because you were, it was so funny. You had to like hold your own composure, and you
exactly.
can't do anything, and everyone's just staring.
And I have to watch myself,
And you're
which
like, oh man.
no, there was no get out of jail card.
No, none of that. But
Yeah.
on that note, while the keynote was playing, I was looking around, and usually I want to like check out the engagement and just gauge like, oh, how's the room receiving this? And it was really well received. People were paying attention.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really great. Once
Yeah.
again, shout out to Sam like for designing such an amazing deck. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also a really big sign of whether or not the message that you're preparing is connecting with people. And if it doesn't, then when you're on stage, you know you have a little bit more work to do.
Yeah. Agreed. So then after the pitch video was played, we went up to do the live Q&A, and there were the three co-founders who joined me, and we went through the questions.
They ask you some really hard questions. They're really critical. Mind you, for me, when I'm thinking of like, female founders and like female judges, like I automatically think that the questions are a little bit easier, I feel.
That is
That is precisely an
the,
example.
exactly
of-
precisely the problem.
Exactly.
Where you think,
Yeah, I admit
and I honestly felt like I had the most technical questions.
it was no, not really.
Okay, fine, maybe
ish.
not, but
yeah. But then
you're right. There was a little bit more. I was hoping to tell more of my personal stories.
more feely questions, but less
little bit.
technical questions.
A little bit, because I think there was power. I really wanted to, as you know, I really wanted to share my own story about what that meant to me.
Yo, you can share here now.
We can share it a little bit after.
Let's share after.
But
How do you feel, by the way, when you were walking up to stage? Like, how did it feel? This is your first time doing that.
I wasn't too nervous, but I was nervous at the unexpected. You never know, because it's a live Q&A in front of people. And so that was scary, but
You don't look like it at all, by the way.
oh, really?
Not at all. Not at all.
That's good to hear.
You're always
I had no idea.
really good.
Actually, I never asked you, but thank you.
Yeah, you didn't look like it at all. You were the whole time. You're super composed, and I know you can do it. Like I know you can do it. I've seen you do this over and over again, different settings, and you always carry yourself super well.
Good.
Yeah, so it was good. Yeah.
So the questions, I would say,
Do you remember the questions?
yes. One of them was around how we got the early traction. Another question was, what do you think your solution and the future of it can be? I also know, I don't know if you recognized it, but I recognized it in my mind, that Val had asked me a question that was a twofold question. And being me with my fish brain memory, I only remembered the one and I answered the one, and I didn't remember the second one. And thank goodness that the second one, Sal, was also asked me a question that I can then merge the both answers and hopefully recuperate it a little bit. And that was around kind of the vision and the future of the Fun Pass. And then the third one was around kind of more technical integrations.
Integration of other event platforms.
Exactly. And, that one I paused a little bit and I was able to kind of tie it in with, the value to the business.
Like, sometimes when you don't have answers to questions, like in preparation for these pitches, there's only so many answers you can prepare. You're like 5, 6 stories that you can tell and answer. And it's important to be able to know how to tie it back to which stories, depending on the questions that you ask, because you don't know what questions they're asking. And you always need to be able to come up with a insightful answer. Right. So I think you did a really good job for what it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it shows.
And I was, and then it felt fast in the moment. It felt like.
How long was it? Do you remember?
Maybe
10 minutes?
10 minutes or so.
Yeah. Three, 4 questions.
4 questions.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have prepared it any other way.
I agree.
I would have prepared it, if not even more, if I had more time.
More meditation.
More meditation, more
falling asleep.
More, exactly. But even if it was for every 10 minutes, I would have prepared the exact same amount of time for any presentation. It's just important if you want to if it's important to you.
Yeah.
And so walked off the stage. We did.
How did you feel, by the way? Like walking off the stage?
Walking off the stage, I felt like I was a little bit sad.
Oh no!
Because I really wanted to share my personal story about the value what it meant to me, because I really felt it. Remember, I came back to you like, oh, I'm so sad. I couldn't share it. I couldn't share it, and that made me sad.
What a cliffhanger! You just keep talking about this story that you really want to tell, but you're not telling the story.
I kind of alluded to it in the beginning of the podcast, but you're right.
We'll that's
talk
why
about
you should
it after
stay till
when we
then.
think about the takeaways.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit sad about that. And I think in your mind, you always think you could do better. So there was definitely some thoughts there, but then I kind of just went away after. And of course, there were moments where I doubted myself, like, oh, I don't think I did well. That was kind of dry. I didn't talk about the meaning that I could have had, the impact that I could have on the space itself. And so,
how big were these doubts in your mind at that moment?
How big were they? They were pretty.
Was it overwhelming?
They were just floating. No. It was just kind of floating thoughts. I'm like, oh, I didn't do that great. Or, oh, I could have shared more. Oh, I could have elaborated more on this. Oh, did I seem nervous? And of course, there were always these
check-ins with yourself.
Check-ins.
Yeah, totally.
But you know what? I'm not someone who dwells on it.
That's amazing.
It's just a thought that comes by. I'm like, oh, I could do better, but what can you do? It is what it is, right? Like, am I going to go back to change it back? No. If I get it, great. Was it a great experience? Beautiful. It's a win.
That's all that matters. And I think the reason why I asked that is because it really shows the current state that you're at. It's important for us to reflect on like, yes, these thoughts come by, but let's not attach ourselves to these thoughts. And it's okay to have these thoughts, myself included, always. But then it's amazing to see what state you're at.
And then I stayed behind to watch the other pitches, and
the final moment came.
And then the final moment
which is voting time. It was really funny because you were standing right at this. It's like you're standing out of this entire stage. There's only one spot that has a spotlight, and you're literally standing right underneath that spotlight, which was really cool. And when I saw that, I'm like, you know what? Cass has it in the bag.
Yeah, I didn't think, and when I got on stage, after they started announcing it, I felt like, I think I'm gonna win.
Yeah, I never doubted you at all.
Yeah. Oh. And then we were able to
take home the runner-up
prize.
Yeah. Yep. Which is amazing because the winner is making such a big impact, and I had no doubt that they would win as well.
We both thought, like, okay, it was a project that had a beautiful social impact, with great traction
Huge,
and
huge,
beautiful big partners.
huge. Like
And
Vayner and the likes.
yeah. And so they were able to show that initial traction, and it was good.
Values aligned. Everything was aligned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I totally well deserved. And walking out of this, when I think back about, did I expect to win? No. Would winning be a bonus? Yes. And I definitely, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And it was great to be able to do that. And what was even better, which was I'm so impressed at the intentionality behind F3's actions around this whole competition, was that they actually split a 30,000 pot so that every finalist would take home something. And so the 30,000 plot was then split between all 9 finalists, with obviously the first prize taking home the biggest allotment. But the intentionality behind that is just so well thought of. And who else would do this except for women supporting other women, right? Like women, just the best.
You know what? It's so interesting because like living in a house full of women, and just working with them and just being with them for 3 days is just a different experience for me personally. And I'm like, wow, all these energy flowing through me, and I'm like, how do I take up this?
You did a great job. I think everybody looked at you as, you are the best male supporter. You couldn't have been a better supporter.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It was great, and I appreciate you for it.
Thank you. It was fun. It was like having an open mind of like, hey, checking out what this is. Like my whole intention of going into this was just like being the best supporter that I can. At the same time, being able to be open to receive this experience and see what I can get away from it and learning from it, and which you have taught me a lot, especially after this whole event and winning. We the next day we went for a walk, grabbed some lunch and whatnot, and then you were asking me, you're like, hey Wilson, now that you have experiences, what was the biggest takeaway? What would you do differently with your business? And my immediate answer was like, oh, it was interesting.
It was interesting, but it was good perspective. But
same.
It's important that we're too small of a team. So how could we really make a change? It's important when you don't have the resources. And I think that's actually a good perspective, right? Like, and to give some people's context in particular, we were talking about how can we have more representation for underrepresented people, including women, including disability. How can we show up? Because representation is so important, to be able to see somebody who you look like, who you don't look like, and know that they can contribute a different perspective that is very valuable, is important. And so
and I think like the fact that when you took the time to explain it to me, to educate me like that, that was when I realized that I can make a difference. And it brought me back to when I used to shop at Home Depot a lot, and I still do, buying different tools and whatnot. I'm always so inspired by how Home Depot actually hires people of disability, a portion of it, to work there and give them opportunities, and that it's okay to live a normal life as well. And so that for me was my understanding of representation. And I realized that, at Night Market, it has over 1 million people that go through the doors every single season. And we have 100 staff. And that is an area where I can actually make a difference in terms of committing to hire a percentage of our workforce to give these minorities an opportunity to show up and be normal as well.
Yeah.
And that's why after that convo, I'm like, oh, I can make a difference, and I've committed, and I shared that with you, that we are going to commit 10% of our workforce to provide these opportunities of people of minority, and to give them this
especially in such a high
platform.
visible space. I think it's important from attendees as well as your teammates to see that this is important. And sure, it may take an extra effort to find them, right? Or to have it, but it is, the impact is so valuable. And until we get to a space where
normalized.
it's normalized, we need to make that extra effort.
Agreed.
We're in a space of change.
Agreed. And it was a huge lesson that I took away from it, and I'm like, oh, thank you for helping me realize that.
And then we then celebrated at a nice intimate dinner. Oh my gosh, the food was so good.
So good.
It was catered food by a woman-founded company, and it was great. We even had a tarot card reader there, which was super cool. And yeah, the food was great. We celebrated. We had some cool conversations with other founders, the organizers, everyone, and it was really nice to end the way. We snuck away for pizza with your glass of wine, and then and then we had the next day to roam around Toronto and had some quiet time without the kids. Had a nice little date.
Yeah.
And then we flew back and went home. Had to, originally we arrived home at 10 p.m. and we were going to go pick up the kids right away. But we figured we took the night, which was even better. Went back home to do a regular routine movie, had some late night takeout, and then got us all ready for the morning when we went to just pick up the kids just now.
3 hours ago, and here we are back to regular programming.
Yeah.
Huge kudos to you, Cassandra Chan.
Thank you.
For taking home this prize.
Thank you.
I think, much more importantly, let's end off with the story.
What story?
The story that you couldn't tell on stage. And what it means to you, right? Because I'm so inspired by it too. I think it's so important.
Yeah, so what I was saying was this competition meant more to me from the experience of just preparing it and just observing it and the value it brings. And I shared a little bit about it being really hard, especially as a mom of two with a toddler who is 1.5. It's hard to want to be there and go there, but it is more important for me, but also more important to show up and show that you can be a beautiful, being a beautiful parent. You can also be a powerful business owner. You can also be a powerful leader. So it's important that you can be able to embrace multiple roles as a woman, because sometimes I think a lot of females or women, they just feel like they're defined by what you're kind of confined to, whether that is the mother role or the wife role or the ex role. So it's important to have showed up and showed that you can do that. Now, the other side was I was in this area of not really knowing where I wanted to go, especially after having my second. I had this lost in identity. I didn't know whether I wanted to go back to my corporate job where there's stability, there's financial stability, there's not as much risk. I knew what I was doing. I built 12 plus years experience building that. But I also had this decision of, do I want to go back to my corporate life or work together and build out this business with you? And it was scary because that meant that there was no stability. That's two incomes on entrepreneurship, salaries. So stability isn't the name of the game. You're stepping into the unknown. And I'm really throwing out all my career that I've built out the last 12 plus years into this. And it isn't easy, but it's very important. And I think that winning this accomplishment, not even winning this, it just validated everything that I've done and the choice that I've had. And it's important. And I hope that this story can inspire someone else that you can redefine your journey at any time. You know, even though it may feel like you're maybe too old, or maybe you feel like you're already a mother, it's too late for me, and it's really not. And so that's what I took away with it. And more importantly, it was life-changing in a way because it made me understand that, and it made me know how important representation is, which made me make shifts in my mind around how can I make a bigger impact in this space, because I want to be able to share that light and shine that light in others. And that is the biggest takeaway that I had with this competition.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
It's so true. Like you are a force in nature, because not only are you an amazing mother to our kids, always creating memories with us and experiences, but you're also able to carry yourself so beautifully. Oh,
We were talking about it yesterday.
yeah.
I was like, oh,
at work, you're
how did I become like this?
yeah, and you're just growing into it, and I'm so proud of you, and
Thanks,
honored
love.
to be able to build
You're
this
making me all teary-eyed.
beside you. It's and that's also the reason why we're recording this podcast and sharing our journey, is because what you said about representation is that you can be a mother, you can be a parent, you can be a father, you can go 100 miles per hour with work, you can create a life of your own design, and you can also have a lot of fun along the whole way, and you can build something with your partner. Like you can have it all in your own terms, as
Yeah.
long as you set the intention and you're both aligned, have this vision.
What was funny was I didn't even know what kind of impact. I always knew I wanted to impact and inspire, but I didn't know until after the conference. I had 2 or 3 people come to me and be like, "You're a mother? I didn't know. How do you balance it?" And that's where I'm like, wow, there's people needing this to see that this is
Doable.
doable.
Yeah.
Balanced, difficult,
Difficult for sure.
doable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just not afraid of just putting in the work, and just know that it's doable. And I think that's the last message that we want to share with you guys. This will be a pretty long podcast, but nonetheless, I think it's important to share this experience, and we're so proud of you guys.
Thanks.
Yay! Yeah, so lots more happening this upcoming week. We're preparing for our VIP event. We actually have a lot of guests flying into for this event, and share a lot more with you to actually demo the platform, potential investments, and our partners are flying in as well to check out what we've built, and it's going to be a lot of work ahead of us again. Yeah, so there you go. Make sure you guys like, follow, and subscribe us on the platform that you're listening to this or watching, and make sure you let us know how we can improve, what you want to listen or hear more of, more stories, or more lessons, or more of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.